Hello, this is Leighton Pearce presenting Radio Sampler, brought to you by the Department of Environment, Water and Natural Resources. Welcome to Radio Sampler. I'm Leighton Pearce, and we're going to have a very special guest today. We have the Vice President of Vic No-Till, plus he's also the current Coles Weekly Times Australian Farmer of the Year. Welcome, Grant Sims.
Yeah, g'day, Leighton.
Grant, can you tell us about your farm?
So we farm at Pine Grove in north central Victoria, which is sort of near Echuca, I suppose. It's about 4,000 hectares we put in of all cropping at the moment, and playing around with some livestock at times. It's my wife and myself and my mum and dad, and we've got two boys that work for us as well on the farm. I'm a sixth generation farmer, sort of been brought up on the farm. We've got clay soils, sort of red and darker, or you wouldn't call them black, but dark brown, I suppose, clays for the technical people out there. And our long-term average rainfall is supposedly 430 mil a year, but we probably, been getting maybe 200 growing season and 300 for the year generally, apart from last year.
So can you tell me about the systems that you use on your farm?
Yep. So we use a disc seeder on a 13-inch spacing. And after hanging out with you Sanford blokes, we're really looking at narrowing up those spacings. But I suppose we went a little wider just to handle trash flow originally with a tine. So it's just a sort of, a stepping all things that we've got to work towards. We do a lot of rotations, part of our system. We've got 10 different grain crops we're growing this year and about 5 companion crops and a couple of cover crops. I ran some cattle to the old man's delight over some covers this year and saw some pretty amazing stuff there. So they're definitely on the in the sights to looking at integrating them a bit more in our rotations and system. Our stubble management is just try and get as much as we can and keep it on the ground, or so we just sow through it. We've actually just put a deposit down for a stripper front this year after talking to Tom and from meeting you guys at Sanford, which is a great thing we've been able to come across. And nutrition management, we use sort of liquid fertilizers, the biological sort of brew that put together. Yeah, and the nitrogen side of it, we don't use any urea anymore. We've sort of played around with trials and stuff and have found, we're just trying to get, plants and rotations to do that. And, just keep as much diversity and cover and stuff on our paddocks as we can. So we also do controlled traffic, which I think is another tool that we use in this system.
So how do you measure soil health yourself?
Probably just, looking at it. I've always been a big believer. I have a shovel and a push probe in my ute all the time, and I just love getting out and digging it, which is probably not good tillage and that. But, just the structure. You can soon work out a good one and a bad one from you grab the soil and if it's crumbly and those sort of signs, and then also just the life in it. You can see, we get a lot of worms now and those things coming in, and I think that's a big measure. Soil testing, nutrient testing, and all that's a guide, but I think the real is just the feel, softness, and the life in the soil is I think the biggest measure of soil health.
What has been the current Coles and Weekly Times Australian Farm of the Year meant to you, and what changes has that made to your farming system or your life?
No, it's been, it's a great honour, and there's a bit of a surprise. It's been good, and what it's meant is I've had to do a few more of these interviews and things like that, which is, it's all good, all part of it. Just keeping on, not dropping the ball and keep motivated to keep, taking that next step and pushing the boundaries further, I suppose.
So it was all worth nominating yourself at the time.
And voting for myself. Yeah, I think I bought every single newspaper in Victoria. So it's all, good. Everyone's Yeah, no, funny. It's all a bit of fun. I couldn't drink in me local pub for about a month, and every time, had to do one of these. I probably won't be able to go back in there now for another month once this comes out. But no, it's all good. It keeps me off the beers.
And what's the funniest thing that you've seen happen on your farm?
Oh, well, actually, I've seen a fertiliser rep, and I won't name names, sniffing the soil and going, oh, how good's this smell? Pick up a rotted, decayed tillage radish plant and sniff that. And I don't know if anyone's done it before, but I wouldn't recommend it. And for the rest of the day, he could not get that smell off his hands. So that was pretty funny. Just one thing off the top of my head, but yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us in our studios here at Radio Sanford, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Good on you, Leighton. Thanks for that.
Sanford would like to thank our sponsors John Deere, Growing Solutions, Grain Growers, Manutech, NDF, Sinon, NAB, Topcon, AGF Seeds, Glencore Grain, Viterra, Pete's Soil and Garden Supplies, and Needham Ag Technologies for their valued support throughout the year. Okay, welcome to Radio Sanford, and today's guest is Ben Beck. And Ben, welcome to Radio Sanford.
Thanks, Leighton.
Now, Ben, can you tell us about your farm?
I can, yeah. We're based at Wagga in New South Wales, in the Riverina, and cropping enterprise. We don't really carry any stock. Yeah, we're a third generational farming system, and we've expanded over time. So we crop about 1,800 hectares now, and we're doing that with just 2 labour units, myself and a fellow that works for us. And so we do a bit of contracting and things as well. And so our operation's set up as we run as a family trust. Just my wife and I are directors, and we have 1 employee in that system. We've been farming for 2006 was our first year, so 10 years now. We've come a long way in those 10 years, I guess. And so we're cropping, so we're growing pulses, canola, and cereals as well. We're probably 25% legumes at the moment, and we've just realised in the last 5 or 6 years how important legume is in our system. Each crop that we grow now in our rotation seems to complement the next crop, and we're finding we're getting a better result every year, or year on year seems to be improving. The soil types where we are is sort of red Keener-soil clays, and we have about 20-inch rainfall as our long-term average. And it's pretty much 40 to 45 mils a month is our long-term average, and it can obviously come in larger amounts and then miss a couple of months, and as it can across Australia.
Can you tell me about your farming system?
We're a stubble retention system. We haven't done any wholesale burning for years. We use a disc seeder, which we've been doing now for 6 years. Before that was an off-point press wheel system. So stubble retention, and we have incorporated a little bit of windrow burning in the last few years, and that we just realised that was as a weed control mechanism in harvest weed seed management to help our longevity, I guess, make the herbicides we have go longer in our system. So we use a disc seeder, and we also use a stripper front now to try and help the plant establishment at sowing, so the taller straw enables us to get a better, or less hair pitting, and more consistent plant establishment during sowing. We're on a narrow row spacing now. We've done most row spacings. We started out about 9 inches, and I think we went to 10.5, 12, 15, and with the time machine, trying to keep our stubbles, realising the importance of that. And then we transferred to a disc system, and we've just realised that we didn't need to be so wide, and we felt we were missing crop competition and potentially a reasonable amount of yield. So now we went back to a 10-inch disc system, and then for 2 years, and this year we've just gone back narrowed those row spacings up to 7.5 or 7 inches to get a bit more crop competition. The rotation I spoke about briefly so we're 25% legume, and then we'll come into that with the canola. So 4 years, so 25%. So 25% legume, canola, cereal. So the legume will be first in the rotation, then we'll go follow that with canola for a disease break and a double grass weed control year, good grass weed control, and then we'll come to follow that with wheat, and we've got good grass weed control to come into the cereal program. And so far we haven't had to control any grass weeds post-emergent in our 2 years of cereal, and the last year of cereal has been barley, and we can tolerate a few grass weeds because we know we're going back into a double break straight after that. But the issues have been grass weeds have been less of a problem with the narrow row spacings due to the crop competition. and we're finding the higher plant densities in barley at 150 metres, and using research that's been carried out locally through the New South Wales DPI, and so we're having higher plant densities, more crop competition, less black oats that might only have one panicle with 3 seeds instead of the wider rows that might have 10 panicles with 30 seeds on them each, and that's quite obvious when you go to the narrow row spacings. It stands out. We don't have any livestock on our majority of our country. We do have one property that still has a reasonable amount of infrastructure, so we've had some lands on adjustment, trying to incorporate some livestock into our system now, realising that might be an important element, and potentially another little sideline cash flow. And the kids like to ride the motorbikes around, gives them something to do on the weekends. As far as stubble management, we use the stripper front at harvest time on all our cereals, and so that's just, we don't do any summertime management with our stubbles. We just sow straight into that with the next crop. We do a bit of summer fallowing to keep our paddocks clean, but we've actually noticed with the stripper front we've had far less summer weeds germinate. We get a little bit of volunteer cereals in our wheel tracks, which we control those, but it's been much less of an issue than having bare paddocks or overgrazed paddocks that we see around the district. We use a knife front like most people do in their legumes and canola. We have done a little bit of canola with the stripper front as a bit of a trial after talking to some guys in South Australia, and we were a bit dubious about it, but it actually worked far better than we thought it might, and we'll do a bit more of that this year. We didn't want to do too much last year. We wanted to see how the tall straw would affect our planting and potentially all the other operations during the year, but we've had a pretty straight through run with it this year, and it's been no problem at all, so we'll probably go on with that a bit more next year. With nutrition, we started noticing we're getting more sulphur deficiency in our cereal rotations, and we have had a couple of years of high rainfall, particularly in winter, and we're recognising now sulphur deficiency is a bit of an issue, so we're using green am on our cereals to get some little bit of early nitrogen and some sulphur into our cereals to help them tiller and with a bit of plant health. And nitrogen, we've probably done like most people, we've gone to pretty high rates of nitrogen. Up until a couple of years ago, now we're actually backing those rates off and still maintaining yields, and certainly the legumes helping with that, and it's part of our risk management too, not to reducing our expenditures, reducing our risk profile to extreme weather scenarios. And then the stripper front also allows us to have 100% ground cover and really good residue. There's no residue to spread pretty much, so it's nice and even in our across the ground.
So, what are you aiming to achieve on your farm?
We're trying to lower our input costs, which I think we're doing quite a pretty good job of at the moment with our rotation. Every crop we're growing is complementing the next one and helping to keep the costs down. So we're trying to maintain our productivity, reduce our costs, and ultimately, I suppose, simplify our system, give us a bit more spare time, and obviously still remain profitable and go on from there.
So, from what you've heard today at the Vic No-Till conference, what are you planning to change as far as your management on your farm?
We've already implemented a lot of the things we've heard today, I think, in bits and pieces, and I think that's important. We've heard a lot about soil biology and how it functions. It operates 90% of the functions in our soil are done through biology. Nutrient, moisture exchange into the plants, all done through biology. So if you've got a more healthy biological component in our soils, it has to make our plants more resilient and more healthy. So we focus on that, and we're trying to, through increasing our plant health, we're hopefully going to get away from more fungicides and insecticides, which we haven't used broadacre insecticides for a long time. The only one is in a pulse crop, and we're working on trying to eliminate that too.
How do you measure soil health in your terms?
Well, I actually get a shovel out and I smell it. It smells sweet. It smells like chocolate, and which is exciting. There's no really scientific aggregate stability and your earthworms, and you see a lot of life in the soil now, which we haven't seen a lot of previously. But just the last 2 years, our system, to me, just seems like it's really all just come together, and it seems to be going quite well.
So, what's the most enjoyable part of farming to you?
I enjoy the challenge of just growing a crop, I suppose, and planting a seed and watching it grow. And obviously, you get to the end of the season, and I find it quite satisfying. And some years are better than others, but I enjoy it. It's And now with this new biological component that we're hearing about in soil health, it's just another step to our system. And we've spent the last 10 years listening to other people and other people's systems and taking parts and bits and pieces that suit us to try and improve our operation. And it seems to be coming together quite well.
If you weren't a farmer, what would you be?
I often joke about this with my wife. I'd just go and drive a school bus and not worry about too much else. But they've got a pretty stressful job too, I'm sure.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Ben, for joining us in the studio of Radio Sampfer, and all the best for the future.
Thank you. Good on you.
You can email or text Sampfer with any suggestions for future programs. Our email is admin@santfer.com.au, and our text number is 0427 688 028. Okay, welcome to Radio Sampfer, and did you hear the one about the Aussie and the Yank in a ute? Well, you're just about to. Our special guest today is Rick Bieber, all the way from South Dakota. Welcome, Rick, to Radio Sampfer.
Thank you, Australia, and thank you for Sampfer for having me.
Rick, can you tell us about your farm in South Dakota?
I farm on a multi-generational farm. At present, my son is there. He's presently taking the farm over. Our location is right in the heart of the North American continent, about 1,700 miles from any kind of ocean. So our freight rates are quite expensive. Our farm size is a little too big, and we're trying to downsize a bit just to make it more manageable. We've learned how to integrate many things into it, so the profitability continues to grow, so the size of the farm doesn't have to. I've been farming my entire life. We've been doing no-till for 30 years and cover crops since 1998. We farm wheat. We used to grow wheat fallow in my father's operation. Now we do multiple. We do wheat and corn and sunflowers and chickpeas and buckwheat and just a whole array of crops. Our soil types run from sand, and then we have a large amount of just nice loamy soils, and we have a bit of clay soils also. Our rainfall is about 400 mils, and we get the bulk of our rain at the beginning of our growing season in May and June.
And obviously a lot of Australians know about your snow and your frozen soils over there. Can you tell me more about that?
We will get down to minus 35 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. That's about when they meet each other, and our soils will freeze about 2 meters deep, so our water lines are all in the ground at least 2.5, 3 meters. It makes it quite difficult to manage things if you have to do anything to the soil for 4 or 5 months out of the year. During the summertime, we'll also get up to about 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, so we do have a very wide array of temperatures that we work within.
Can you tell us in Australia about your farming system and the machinery that you use on your farm?
Our seeding equipment comprises of mainly low disturbance openers. I look at the soils of the earth as the skin of the earth, much the same as our body has skin on it. When we have to have any kind of incision into our body's skin, we want to have as sharp of instrument as possible. So I want to have as sharp of instrument as I have to penetrate the skin of the earth also. And our row spacing is we try to have our row spacing as narrow as possible to get canopy as quick as possible to keep the sunlight off the soil. Nowhere in Mother Nature is there row spacing. There's spacing between plants, but there's no row spacing, so I don't know why we as man have to try to contradict what Mother Nature has naturally happening. In our rotations, we try to do a broadleaf and then a grass and then a broadleaf and a grass, and we try to maintain all 4 crop species: warm season grasses, cool season grasses, warm season broadleafs, and cool season broadleafs. We also have a livestock enterprise. I grew up with sheep. For various reasons, that enterprise has left our farm, but we have cattle for a livestock enterprise. Our stubble management is just pluck the kernels off the top of the stubble and leave the stubble where it grew. So we use stripper headers for harvest. Nutrient management, we're trying to get to a zero input nutrient and rely more and more on the crops feeding the plants of the next crop. sometimes that's a challenge, and more of a challenge on my mental aspect than it is on the aspect of what the soil is.
Obviously, we've got a lot of people coming over from America to Australia to talk about cover cropping, and it's something that's really just beginning in Australia. Can you see this working in Australia? Do we have the right environment?
All environments work. I travel around the globe speaking about soil care, and what I've found wherever I go and whatever continent I'm on is that we have a commonality, and that commonality is the most important thing on the face of the earth, and that's the carbon molecule. And the soil wants to have that placed into it with a plant through CO2 sequestration. And that carbon molecule is what feeds the smallest things in the soil that help the roots and help the plants become healthy. So we all have that commonality of carbon, soil particles, and plants. And after that, it becomes very, very simple. So yes, cover crops will work in Australia. They work around the world. There are a number of growers in Australia that are already doing cover cropping. And as a matter of fact, we're sitting in the Ute right now looking at cover crops in Australia.
So obviously we're not looking at monocultures, but mixes of crops. So what's the essential parts that we need and types of plants that we need in that mixture?
That is a question that's impossible to answer because everybody has their own recipe, much the same as wives cook different recipes and cookies taste different when they come out of different wives' ovens, even though they have the same ingredients. So those are things that you're going to have to discover for yourself in Australia. The soils are hungry for warm season grasses and cool season grasses, warm season broadleaves and cool season broadleaves. And from there, it's a wide array to make your own mixture.
So you mentioned that you've got cattle. How important or integral are cattle to your system and that working?
Livestock is a very important component of making this whole system work. They are just one tool, much the same as you have tools in your shed or you have tractors and you have spreaders and you have all those tools. The livestock on my farm, are an important tool because they generate income for me, but more importantly, they spread the biology that's naturally occurring in the soil uniformly throughout my paddocks, so that way the plants have the biology there and they don't have to wait for something else to grow it and get it there.
And what's your measure of a healthy soil?
Smell.
I'd like to thank you, Rick, for joining us in the Ute, and really want to show our deep appreciation for the great input and the generosity that you've shown towards Sanfa over the last many years, and you're a very valued friend of Sanfa.
Thank you very much. I met Sanfa in 2008 for the first time and have had a strong connection with your organization. Since then, you've got some very excellent soil caretakers within the Sanfa area and around Australia also.
The Cutting Edge magazine is available to all financial members of Sanfa. Go visit www.sanfa.com.au and download our latest membership form. Thank you for listening to Radio Sanfa, the voice of agriculture.